Right, in this video, let's get you hitting the big stick, the driver, better, more consistently, and a little bit longer as well. We're going to cover some driver basics, the things that you absolutely need to do with this club to get the most out of it. So how do you make the game feel easier, shoot lower scores and lower handicaps? Well, one of the things that you can do is be more consistent off the tee. If you can hit the ball in the fairway more often and hit the ball longer, most golfers I speak to find that the game's much easier. The game becomes difficult when the driver's not working, when you're missing the fairway right, chipping out, or maybe you're hitting it nowhere near the distances that you know you can. That's when the game feels really hard. Now, we said at the start there that the game becomes easier when you hit the ball straighter and longer. Longer is something I think I can help you with. There is a training course right now on my website called Boost Your Club Head Speed. It's a 3-part series over 6 minutes of content, which I really believe, well I know because I have feedback from it, can help you add speed to your driving swing, which will give you those longer drives, those shorter approach shots and those lower scores. So I'll leave a link up in the corner here, and there's one down in the description box as well. So let's get started in this video. And if we're going to talk about driver basics, we pretty much have to start with the tee height. You know, we do, with the driver, 99.9% of the times, tee the ball up. We don't really hit these clubs off the ground anymore. So you get to choose the tee height, and that will have a huge influence on your golf swing. What I wouldn't want you to do is tee the ball really low. That's pretty common. And a low tee sort of suggests or promotes lots of movements in there that we don't really want. So you can see that, you know, what I've got here is what I would class as the minimum height. But I would love you to get at least half of that ball above the top of the club. That's really important. It's going to help us achieve lots of things that we speak about in this video. So tee height, really important. Let's get that right. Next thing we have to be aware of, ball position. So where do we want the ball in our stance, and what do we use as our reference points? Well, what we use as our reference point is really important, but let's talk about it relative to our feet to begin with. So as I take my address to this golf ball, provided I've got that camera in the right spot, I want that ball very much up towards my lead heel, and hopefully you can see that there. What's also really important, and this kind of goes along with that, is we need that ball to be in front of the middle of you. So that's going to be, you can use that as belt buckle or you can use that as upper body, but we want it forward of the middle of you, and that's why we have that ball opposite that lead heel. So what that means is I can actually place that ball opposite that lead heel, but I can still kind of lean forwards and have the ball pretty much under the middle of me, which really isn't going to get the job done, and it's not going to allow me to do those things that we want to do. So as that ball is opposite that lead heel, I really want you to feel like the sternum or your buttons on your top is behind the golf ball. In order to do that, we need to make sure that our weight is 50-50, evenly distributed between both feet, and we've got a good width of stance. If I narrow my stance too much, you'll notice that suddenly my sternum becomes more in line with the ball. So the 3 really key setup points from this face on is ball is opposite the lead heel, really important. Sternum is behind the ball, that's almost more important, and the width of stance is going to determine kind of how far behind the ball that sternum is. So we need a slightly wider stance than you would have with any of the other clubs in your bag. Good setups don't guarantee anything, but they encourage those good things to happen and they allow them to happen. So make sure you follow those checkpoints when you're looking at your setup from the face-on view. Now when we look at the setup from the down the line, we also see something slightly different relative to the irons, and that would be what we call arm hang. So arm hang is very simply, if I just move the golf club away, is what those arms are doing. Are they hanging very much straight down from the shoulders? Are they hanging more inwards, or are they hanging more outwards? Now with your iron clubs, if I grab myself a 6-iron here, if I set up to obviously an imaginary ball, hopefully you can see that my arms will be hanging pretty much straight down from my shoulders. There's certainly no outwards in them and there's no inwards. They're pretty much straight down, and that's exactly what I'd love you to sort of strive for when you're hitting your iron shots. But what about when I take my driver setup? Well, when I take my driver setup, you're going to see something a little different. Notice now how my arms are hanging slightly away from me. If I took my trail hand off and relaxed it, you can see this would be it hanging straight down from my shoulders. I want you to certainly allow your arms to hang a little bit more away from you at setup, which is certainly going to help us as we start to want to try and generate speed and power and all of those things that are really important with the driver. So in terms of how you stand, it's not really a lot different to the irons. You might be a little bit more upright. It's more the fact that the arms are a little bit more extended, which is really important with the driver. You start to get yourself too close and it becomes incredibly difficult to generate speed and power with this club. So arm hang is a little different with the driver relative to the rest of the clubs in the bag. So let's go through some of the basic swing motions which are important with the driver. And we're going to cover three, that's two, we're going to cover three that I see being probably the most important when we're looking at this driver, and possibly the ones that people get wrong the most. So let's first of all look at what is this club head doing as we move the club away from the golf ball. Well, it's working inwards and the face is opening. What do I mean by that? Well, as I set myself up, with any luck, that club face points down the middle of the fairway, and hopefully it does there. Now, as I begin my golf swing, if we were to imagine a line on the end of that golf club, on the toe of that golf club, the golf club very quickly moves inwards off that line. What it certainly doesn't do is it never ever moves straight back from the golf ball like this. However, lots of golfers are trying to do that, and especially if you're someone who, you know, maybe isn't as accurate with the driver as you'd like to be, maybe you spray the ball a little bit left and right, it kind of makes a bit of sense that we want a straight swing. A straight swing would give a straight shot, right? Theory's great, but it doesn't work that way. So it's really important that we let that club move. If that was, say, an imaginary wall, we let that club move inwards off that wall relatively early in the golf swing. Now, we don't have to consciously do that. As long as we're adding some body rotation and our arms are connected, that should happen fairly normally. The golfers who are trying to take the club straight back are having to do that, almost manipulate the club to do that with the hands and arms. So rather than trying to let the club move inside or trying to move it inside, feel like the early part of the golf swing is dominated by the shoulders, the body rotation, and the arms are just sitting or going along for the ride. That's a great way to allow that club to work inside. Now, we said inside and open. And if you look at where I am here, that club face is absolutely not pointing at the target anymore. It's pointing certainly kind of more out towards that camera, and that camera there can probably see a lot of the club face. So as that club moves inwards, the club face naturally rotates with it. Again, sometimes the golfers who are really struggling will try and keep that club pointing at the target as that club moves straight back. So, you know, within the first 3, 4, 5 feet of the golf swing, they've already kind of manipulated where the club travels, they've manipulated what the club face is doing, because often those things would feel like it's going to make the ball go straighter. And again, we've said the theory makes a lot of sense, but the reality is not like that. So a great little exercise that you can do, and this is super simple, but just take an address around a golf ball with no golf club and just place your right hand down as if you've got a grip there, but open the palm up, and my palm is going to be facing the target. But just some little rehearsals, and just notice how when I do that, the palm rotates. It works inwards and rotates, and that's a great little exercise that you can do at home, you can do in your office, you can do wherever you are, just to really get the basic movements of what that club face and club head are doing in the early part of the golf swing. Like I said, the first 3, 4 feet of the golf swing are really important, and we can, you know, really make some poor errors there and give ourselves little chance of hitting good shots if we get those concepts wrong. So the next really important one here is trying to get a little bit of weight shift early on. For you to get the most out of your driver, generate the most speed, have the most efficient delivery to the golf ball, we need some weight shift. Standing over the golf ball, locking the legs in place and kind of just swinging with the arms, the upper body, is not really going to get it done with the driver. So a great little focus point here is actually in the early part of the golf swing, is just to feel as if the weight is moving to your trail side relatively early. When we can measure, you know, the best players, we see them doing this. And the weight shift into that trail side happens pretty early, and certainly a lot earlier than many golfers would assume. So as we're feeling that club head works in and the face opens, we can also allow or feel like the weight or the pressure is moving to this trail side. Now, for you to feel that, you have to have a little bit of speed there. You can't really feel that movement with a super slow rehearsal. So again, a great little exercise is to take a setup here, start with the club, maybe a foot in front of the golf ball, and just make some little takeaways. And I can already feel that I'm starting to feel a little heavier under my trail side as I start to build that momentum into that trail side and I start to put some weight into my trail leg. It's that weight into that trail leg which is going to help us move our body in a pretty good way, which ultimately is going to help us as we deliver that club with, which we're going to cover in a moment, hopefully an upward angle of attack, which is, for 90% of you watching this, essential to get the most distance out of your driver. And we really want to try and get the most distance out of this if we can. It's going to make the next shot a lot easier. So in your golf swing, same thing applies. You're going to take an address, you're going to feel the weight moves early into that trail side as we let that club move inwards and up. So before we cover the last point, let's see if I can go ahead and do all of those things. So weight's going to shift very early. Turning over, should be left side of the fairway. Lots of the things that we've done here are to encourage an upward hit. An upward hit would be very simply when the golf club, as it strikes the golf ball, is moving away from the ground. We're not going to go into too much detail, but that is the only way that you can get the most amount of distance from your shots. Many of you will have the club descending into the back of the ball. Doesn't mean you can't hit fairways, but you're not going to hit them as long as you possibly could. Take your head cover. This is possibly one of the most used drills ever, but it's still one of the best. You're going to place that just over a foot in front of the golf ball, maybe a little bit more, depends on obviously the size of your head cover. And very simply, you're going to hit drives in practice where you're trying to work the club up over that head cover. I should be able to hit this golf ball, have a nice flight, a good shot, and it be in the fairway, and not make contact with the head cover as I do that. As soon as I start to get too steep, it's going to hit the head cover. Now, if you do start to hit that head cover, what you would need to do is go back through this video and check everything we've covered. Check ball position, check upper body position, check your weight shift. All of these things will influence this. So like we said at the start, that golfer where the ball is in the middle, the sternum is forward, the tee is low, if they don't transfer their weight, it's really easy to start colliding into that head cover. So this little exercise is more for you to test how well you've done so far in this video. If you can do this, it would suggest that everything so far has been done pretty well. So as it's just starting to rain, let's go ahead and see if I can do all those things and hit this ball without hitting that head cover. Ball went, head cover still in place, and that would suggest that everything was pretty good in terms of what we've covered in this video. So thanks for watching. Usual stuff is down below. I'd love to get your thoughts on this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. It is up in the corner. We'd love you to do that. I really believe these videos can help you play your best golf and just have a little bit more fun next time you make it out onto the golf course. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you again very soon.